Hello, my name is Buhle Mabaso and welcome to episode 7. Behavior change refers to the transformation or modification of human behavior. A fascinating subject and something we think of a lot. Up next, and the focus of this episode, is how we can use behavior change principles in our work in practical ways that support healthy behaviors and safer sex practices. Maya Gokul is the training manager for Africa for the Female Health Company and helps us to think about changing behaviors when it comes to sex.
Behaviors are generally difficult to change. However, the hardest behavior to change is related to sex because sex is pleasurable. So can you imagine how difficult it would be for a man and a woman who have been having flesh-to-flesh sex to now start to use condoms? And therefore, many times, men and women end up having unprotected sex and expose themselves to STIs and HIV and even an unintended pregnancy.
Matthew Willcox is the Executive Director of the Institute of Decision Making, and he shares his thoughts on how behavior change can be used to increase awareness, uptake and use of the FC2 female condom.
One of the key things that I try to bring into conversations with marketers is a more fundamental understanding of how human beings make decisions and choices. And behavioral science, neuroscience, and evolutionary psychology tell us a lot about this. And I think very often we like to think that human beings are very, very rational, that we make choices using the deliberative system, that we kind of weigh up our options and think about which ones are going to be best for us. But a lot of behavioral scientists suggest this is not how human beings make choices, that our intuitions play a much bigger part, that our non-conscious processes rather than deliberative ones play a much bigger part in the choices that we make. Even if we're talking about decisions which sound like they should be very rational, like financial advisors and investors working out how they're going to invest their money, like people deciding how much money they're going to save for their retirement. These sound like very rational things, but actually the choices people make in these areas are very much driven by more emotional and more intuitive factors. Now this is kind of interesting because if people are driven by intuition and by instinct in areas like this, let's think for one moment about sexual health. Evolutionary psychologists will tell you that there are 7 evolutionary drives. One of those is self-protection and survival. Another is mate acquisition. We're deeply driven to form sexual relationships, not surprisingly. That is how our species continues. And it's a very instinctive thing. You know, love and sex are not areas of rational decision making. They are probably the most emotional and intuitive and instinctive aspects of decision making there are. And so if we want people to change their behaviors and make choices in these areas that will lead to better reproductive health, will help reduce the transmission of disease such as HIV, then we need to understand these intuitions and instincts, because it's not going to be enough just to tell people that rationally they should follow one path of behavior or another path of behavior. So what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about how these intuitions are formed and how they affect choices, and perhaps how they might also be particularly relevant to the choices that you want to change. Let's talk about these intuitions. Human beings make decisions using very fast shortcuts, mental shortcuts. And these shortcuts happen really, really quickly. They're kind of almost like gut instincts. They are these sort of feelings we have that we should do something. They propel us towards doing things, but we can't really explain them. We just know they happen very quickly, and we feel we should act on them. A good example of this is a shortcut called social proof, which is when we see other people doing something, we feel that that is the correct thing to do. We feel that is the right thing to do. And through the course of human history, doing what other people are doing has generally been a good strategy to help humans survive and thrive. So there are other shortcuts as well that relate to the field of sexual health. One is that we have a shortcut which is called the optimism bias. And the optimism bias is a mechanism, it's a cognitive mechanism which makes us kind of feel that bad things generally won't happen to us. If it was possible to simply say, we will educate people and then people will do the right thing, then life will be much simpler. But actually, that's not how human beings work. That's not how human beings make choices. And actually, over the long term, over the course of human history, that's a good thing. Because if you were to stop and think and consider everything, if you were to stop and think and consider whether that lion that was about to sort of chase you was a good lion or a bad lion, wouldn't survive. So, really, I think the task is often not just education, is not just trying to appeal to the rational brain, but to appeal to people's intuitions and instincts. So there's a professor at Duke University called Dan Ariely, who has studied these areas, studied particularly the field of behavioral economics. He is one of the preeminent behavioral economics professors in the world. And he wrote a book called Predictably Irrational. And I interviewed Professor Ariely a couple of years ago, and he said, you know, sometimes behavior change, trying to get people to do things that are healthy, that are good for their future, means that we need to try to get them to do the right things, but for the wrong reasons. There's some great examples of how you can overcome this. One I particularly like is a program that was developed to promote voluntary male medical circumcision. Now, that could possibly be one of the biggest marketing challenges in the world. How do you persuade men who are in their late teens and early 20s, to voluntarily become circumcised? The right thing is, yes, to become circumcised, to choose to be circumcised. The right reason is because it will reduce transmissions of HIV. But that right reason is probably not going to be motivating to people. So what the organisation who promoted this did was they had a campaign where they had women talk about their boyfriends. And they had radio ads, and they kind of made this a social media thing and a viral thing, where they had women talk about their boyfriends having this operation, but they didn't talk about this procedure in terms of sexual health. They talked about it by the conversation between these women was, has your boyfriend had the improvement? And implicit in that was that this was obviously a good thing to do. Improvements are good things. But implicit in this was some sexual performance. Implicit in this was the female's appreciation, the girlfriend's appreciation of this guy having had the procedure, having become circumcised. And I think it's a really good example of, instead of focusing on the right reason, they focused on something else. The implication was, this guy is now a better lover than he was before. This guy is one who's had the improvement. It also created a sense of social proof that many people were doing this. So I think one thing we need to think about is, what are the wrong reasons that might get people to do the right thing? What are the wrong reasons that might lead men to become more open to wearing condoms? What are the wrong reasons that women can give men for the right thing for them using female condoms? Or indeed, what are the wrong reasons that women can feel good about using female condoms, even if the big good reason is about avoiding unintended pregnancy or about avoiding sexually transmitted diseases? So one big question I'm asked a lot is, how can you actually influence behavior change as a practitioner? How can you influence changes of behavior amongst the public, amongst your clients? And there's a couple of things that I always say to people. Actually, there's 5. The first is, make the change you need as easy as possible. But the second part of making it easy is to make something cognitively easy. You need to make it feel like a natural and easy choice. The second thing, which is really, really important, is to help people feel that the behavior you want them to embrace is a behavior that many people are embracing. A third area is something I talked about earlier on, which is, how do you create a benefit now? Because so often the things we're trying to do in terms of health are about long-term benefits. And an issue is that intuitively we're more tuned into the short term. This is, humans have survived by being focused on today rather than what's going to happen next year. The fourth area is really it sounds a little counterintuitive, but we are very much more motivated by the prospect of losing something than we are by the prospect of gaining something. For example, retailers use this all the time when they tell people there is an offer which is expiring shortly. Buy it now because it's not going to be here tomorrow, so you will miss the opportunity. And the fifth thing is really about how you set out your frame of reference. And what I mean by this is, well, human beings make choices not by analytically looking at things, not by analyzing every aspect of a choice, but kind of roughly comparing the choices with things we know already. So those are the 5 key areas I normally talk about in my work. I think in one way or another, all of them relate to the behavior change that we're seeking to encourage people to do. I think really, in summary, what I would say is that, of course, I understand many of the pushes towards education, but really for behavior change to have all of the weapons it needs, for behavior change to have all of the tools that it needs, we also need to talk to people's intuitions. We need to talk to people's instincts, to these shortcuts that drive choice. And I think if you can align programs, just as that fantastic voluntary male circumcision program I referenced did, if you can align programs to the way that people naturally choose, then you have a much better chance of people embracing the behavior you need them to as a natural choice, as a choice that comes naturally to them, they don't have to think about, or as my American friends would say, it becomes a no-brainer.
In this episode, we learned about behavior change and heard some examples on how this impacts access to services and commodities like the FC2 female condom. In the next episode, we talk about pleasure and understand why it is critical to consider when working on the FC2. I look forward to welcoming you again. That's all for this episode. I am Buhle Mabaso and thank you for watching. The FC2 is available in these countries across the globe. For more information and to learn more about how we can support you, visit fc2femalecondom.com.